Okay, so welcome back, everyone. For those who have joined us in the last couple of minutes, just to mention that this is day number 3 for TEC EXPO, and we just had a very wonderful presentation on augmentative and alternative communication. And the next presentation is going to be on increasing the accessibility of video. Here with us is Michael Sider from UBC Studios, and I was very pleased, Michael, when I saw that you were going to participate in TEC EXPO, because I've had the great pleasure to meet you in person and been there in the studios as well, and I know that all the work that is done there is fantastic. So welcome, and I'm looking forward to this presentation.
Thank you, and thank you, Faiza, for letting me know about the Expo and inviting us to submit a presentation. We're pleased to be able to contribute. I'm going to try screen sharing. So, yes, thank you for having me. My name is Michael Sider. I'm a producer working at UBC Studios, and this is a presentation about increasing accessibility for video. So if that's what you're looking for, you're in the right place. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge that UBC's Vancouver Point Grey campus, where I am, is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples. This is our first time doing this presentation on this topic, and we're planning to use it more widely for staff and faculty at the university. So I'll be really interested in your feedback. If anyone has any at the end, I can share my email. That would be really helpful. Mm-hmm. So just to give a sense of who I am and why I'm presenting about this, I'm one of the producers working at UBC Studios, which is the central media production unit for UBC. There's a lot of people making video in every department at UBC, obviously, but we're the one central group that has funding and staff toward producing high quality production video, and then also supporting people that are making their own video across the university. So we produce professional media production for educational, communications, and internal, and also knowledge research mobilization, all kinds of different topics, video, animation, graphics. We have an in-house graphics team. We do a lot to support people who are producing their own media, including some do-it-yourself studios at UBC Studios, which are very accessible, mostly free, and there's a great audio, basically a podcasting studio, and a video room, and a lightboard studio. If you're interested in any of that, you can contact us through the website, or you can contact me as well. And we also do a lot of workshops, which is why I'm here today, to support people producing their own media. We offer free media consultations, the producers here. So if you're considering a video project or you're nearly done a video project, we're available and without charge to chat with you, even if we're not going to work on the project with you, to offer what support we can. And associated with us is the Emerging Media Lab. The previous presentation was about an Emerging Media Lab project. So that's basically an R&D space for faculty and students to work together, developing educational media projects in immersive media. So it's less about deliverables and more about exploring and developing new things. As I say, please visit our website, and also you can email me if you would like to know more about UBC Studios. So today I'm going to talk about increasing accessibility in video. This topic focused really specifically on technical tools and technical aspects. Obviously, accessibility is a lot more than technical tools. There's diversity and representation, and there's pedagogical considerations. I'm not experts in these areas, so there are groups on campus that are fantastic supports in these areas. There's Equity and Inclusion Office to talk with about diversity and representation. And Center for Accessibility has a lot of information and support around general accessibility and in the classroom and elsewhere. And then Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology is also a fantastic resource. I'll add some links at the end for these groups in terms of accessing them. And I want to say thank you to some people from those groups in terms of this presentation. I spent some time with Afsana Sharif at CTLT, who's been working in the areas of accessibility and learning for many years, and had some great perspectives and tips for me. And then Arthur Cremens and AC Digger at the Center for Accessibility also sat down with me about this presentation and had some great suggestions and feedback. So those are 3 people that are very available to contact around those issues if you need support in those ways. So yeah, but today I'll be focusing on video and technical accessibility. So, but in the framework that I'm coming from and thinking about these topics from is universal design and learning, which many of you are familiar with UDL, but just to give a quick intro, universal design comes from architecture and planning about making spaces accessible and has some principles and ideas that are involved in that. And then universal design and learning is for learning, for the classroom, for teaching. And sort of one way to describe it in a nutshell would be a proactive approach to learning design that allows us to recognize and accommodate a diversity of learners and to reduce barriers to learning. So these are the ideas that I'm coming from as I approach video in terms of increasing accessibility. And I'll be referring to these ideas and terms as I talk through the presentation. Oh, and just to say, if you have questions, feel free to put them into the chat. I may not catch them because I will be focused elsewhere, but I'll be happy to follow up on them at the end if there are questions in the chat while we're all together still. So one of the concepts that I'll be focusing on is about being proactive in universal design for learning. So this is really about building accessibility into your project plan instead of trying to retrofit your project with accessibility after you've finished producing it. So in a video context, one example of this is when it comes to what we call descriptive video, which is the audio narration describing visual elements in a video that for people that are visually impaired. Ordinarily, this is something that is added on after the video is complete, but a proactive approach is to work descriptive into the script and think about that while you're scripting and while you're filming and just include it right into the original video. It's more efficient and you end up with a better production quality where it flows better than if you're trying to jam it in afterwards. So that's an example of being proactive in universal design for learning with video. Another core concept is universal, which is that if you address the barriers to support one group, inevitably you end up supporting a lot of other groups just by default. So an example in video would be captions are usually added to videos, often with deaf or hard of hearing communities in mind. But once you add captions, it also supports people who are ESL. If the speaker has an accent that the viewer is not used to, it can help them navigate the accent. If you're viewing the video in a noisy environment, you've got the texts right there. You don't need to worry about hearing everything. And it also just increases all the viewers have a better, a more in-depth understanding by having the visual text as well as the audio, whether or not they have challenges. So that's an example of the power of universal design. So as I say, I'll be focusing on tools for accessibility in video, working toward including the entire audience. This is a image from, we provided support for the spring virtual grad here at UBC. And this shows the sign language interpretation that we incorporated into the live video and also the captions. So just to give an example of what we've done in that way. So we'll be looking at captions, transcripts, translation, adapting for colorblind viewers, and sign language interpretation, and descriptive video. So I'll be talking about these. These are the scope of my presentation today. So starting with captions. So this is accessibility that's become a lot more accessible lately. Voice recognition technology is advanced to the point where it's really powerful and inexpensive. So it's really easy to create captions and then easy to add them to video. So it's become into the category of why wouldn't you include captions in a video? We at UBC Studios, we include them as a default, an SRT file or burnt into the video, just because it's so easy and doesn't take a lot of time for us. So we just do that as a default now. I'm going to introduce a couple of concepts about captions just to help as I talk about different tools around it. So it's just an example here of captions. So captions can either be optional, as you see in YouTube or Kaltura, where there's a switch. You can turn them on or turn them off by a toggle, or alternatively, you can burn them in permanently to the image of the video. So there'll be times where it's important to do that, where maybe you're producing a video where you don't know where it's going to be stored or how it's going to be viewed. And if you burn the captions right into the video, you know people will always have access to them. On the other hand, the option is a great thing for if you don't need the captions, it's nice to remove them and to bring them back and forth as needed. So they each have their place. A term that this will help talk through the tools is a SRT file. So this is basically a captions file. It's as you would see with a Microsoft Word document, .doc, or a JPEG is .jpeg. SRT file is .srt. So you'll have the file name will refer to SRT. It's basically a plain text file. And once you've produced it, you can upload it with your video that it's associated with to YouTube or Kaltura or elsewhere. And that way you're controlling what the captions are that pop up automatically. You can produce more than one for the same video, each one for a different language. So you can have an English SRT, you can have a Spanish SRT, you can have a French SRT. And then if you upload them all to YouTube, for example, with the video file, when you click the toggle in YouTube, you see those options pop up. You can choose Spanish, English, French. So that's what an SRT file is. So ways to produce captions, different tools. So the most common and easiest and most accessible probably at the moment is that YouTube and Kaltura both auto-generate captions when you upload a video to the site. I think you might have to ask it to, but it's an auto-generation. It's a free thing that just happens automatically. Usually for both, usually there's a lot of errors, but you can go in and edit the captions once they produce them. So that's easy to do. And then it saves your edited version. In Adobe Premiere, you can create captions. It's a steep learning curve to use Adobe Premiere. It's free if you're staff and students or staff and faculty at UBC, but it takes a while to get up to speed on it, much like Photoshop. So I wouldn't recommend going this route if you're not familiar with Premiere, but if you are, or if you know someone who is, it will generate captions, which again have a lot of errors, but you can edit them. But what you can do in Premiere is control the size, the position, the font, the color, which you can't do. There's a few options in YouTube and Kaltura, but in Premiere, it's really limitless. So you have the aesthetic control in Premiere. And then what we do at UBC Studios is we use a service called rev.com, which it's a fee. It's US $1.50 per minute of video. So, but it's most accurate because part of their service includes proofreading by humans. So there's still errors, but way fewer errors. So it's much faster at our end. It takes about an hour per minute to produce the SRT because of the human proofreading, and you can edit within the Rev website. So what we do is we'll take our finished video, upload it to Rev. It produces the SRT file. We go in and edit on the Rev site, and then we download an SRT file. And then that's what we take with us when we upload our video to YouTube or wherever else we upload that file with it. So yeah, it's the reason that we do that. Again, it's quite a bit more accurate. So it saves us a lot of time in editing. It's not really cost effective if you have hours and hours and hours of video. So most of our videos tend to be 5 minutes or less. So it's inexpensive in that territory. The other thing I need to say about all this is that this is what's available right now. All these services change constantly and the features within. So don't quote me on this. This will change in 6 months, but this is what's happening right now. And this is what we're doing at the moment. So some other potentials. There's a software produced by WGBH, which is, I believe they're the makers of This American Life. It's a public radio group in the United States who also deal with other media. They have a National Center for Accessible Media that's produced a software called Cadet, which is a free downloadable software, runs on your computer. So you produce the SRT file right there on your computer instead of up on a website. So there's some privacy and security benefits to that. I haven't used it, so I can't tell you how good it is or how accurate it is, but it was described to me by some of the staff at Center for Accessibility. So worth looking into, especially if privacy and security are a concern. So this is the website, but it's kind of long. So if you Google search Cadet WGBH, you find it pretty easily. And then there's also a Subtitle Horse, subtitle-horse.com, which is a free website that produces subtitles. Or captions. I haven't used this either, so can't vouch for it, but it's another option that's free to explore. Transcripts, another thing that many groups will find helpful. As with all these options, I can't tell you whether you need a transcript or not. There's a lot of ins and outs on that, but if you need one, here's some things to consider in terms of producing it. There's a sample transcript. So we use rev.com again, which also produces transcripts, which are different from SRT caption files. Again, it's proofread by humans. They say it's guaranteed 99% accurate. I don't know how precisely true that is, but they're very accurate. And you can edit them on the site again, and it's $1.50 US per minute of video. So again, it's great for a short video, maybe not great for a long video. NVivo is a powerful database analysis software that staff and faculty can access through the UBC library. It produces very accurate transcripts. That's not technically what it's for. It's a very powerful tool that just happens to produce accurate transcripts. It's mostly for database analysis, but it's an option, and I haven't used it, but I understand that it's quite accurate, and it's free for staff and faculty at UBC, so it's something to consider. Otter.ai is a private company that is a website. There's a free limited version. You can upload pre-recorded videos to their site to get a transcript. Again, I haven't used this one either, so I don't know how accurate it is. It's actually designed originally for live video transcription, but you can also upload a pre-recorded video. And otranscribe.com is free. It doesn't produce a transcript for you, but it's a platform where you can open your video, and it's very easy note-taking process. So people use it to produce transcripts of their own, and that's just another option that's free. Translation is another area for widening your audience of your video. So I wouldn't recommend using Google Translate, but they have a very nice interface. So I thought I'd throw that image on there. We use, again, rev.com. This isn't a commercial for rev.com, I promise, but we found that we've used their service for web translation to a few different languages and found it to be really accurate for a first pass. $5 US per minute of video. And again, you can go into the website and translate, edit there. And you can also produce a caption file with the translated version. So I made a French caption file for an English video through this process. And then what we have done is we've taken that version and had it proofread by professional proofreader translators. There's a nonprofit organization called Mosaic, which is a refugee support organization in Vancouver that part of their revenue, way that they produce revenue to support their work is by offering proofreading translation. So we paid them $100 per 5-minute video, and they proofread our translations. And they turned out to be helpful in a way that I didn't expect, in that we had translated to French, and the rev.com was very accurate Parisian version of the French. And when Mosaic took a look, they made a lot of edits about turning it into Canadian Quebecois, French-Canadian version of French. So that was really helpful. There are likely a lot of resources at UBC for proofing languages. So maybe within your department, maybe an adjacent department, that'd be something to look into if you're needing help that way. DeepL is a service that I haven't used, but again, Center for Accessibility suggested we mention. So it's free for 30 days and then a paid service after that. And as I mentioned with our experience with French, you want to pay attention to regionalism and dialect and such. So just because you have an accurate translation doesn't mean it's the one you need. So you want to have that in mind. That's where a group like Mosaic can be helpful. Opting for colorblindness. So I'll say off the top, I'm not an expert in colorblindness, but the simple version, the challenge that the main challenge that you want to be careful about is if you have any information where there's a color background and color text, a different color on top of it, you want to make sure that even though it's clear for someone that doesn't have color blindness, you want to make sure that people that are colorblind can still see the text, color on top of color. And that's about the contrast of the colors. The complexity is that it's not just about grayscale. Like you can't just do it to black and white and see if you can still see it, because color blindness, there's a lot of different kinds and they have different effects on the colors. So you can find this out in Adobe Photoshop. There's a viewer option that gives you the view of how your image looks in 2 different kinds of color blindness. So you just go to View, Proof Setup, and color blindness. It shows you the options. And then you can also look at it in grayscale in Photoshop. And Photoshop is free for staff and faculty at UBC. So that's one way to take a look. There's a lot of other free apps that I can't vouch for, but there are many online now that will show you your image as if you were different kinds of colorblind. I'll just show you what Photoshop did to, this is without any filters, some color. And then the most common type of colorblindness is red-green colorblindness, and there's the two common types are protanopia and deuteranopia. So I did, this is with protanopia according to Photoshop, and this is with deuteranopia according to Photoshop. So they're very different effects, as you can see. There's still color there, it just looks very different from the original color. So it's not a simple matter of grayscale. And then I did a grayscale just to show where you can easily see the differences in color in gray, but that doesn't necessarily help you figuring out whether someone will have challenges differentiating the colors. So, and just to emphasize that, I have, this is on the left are colors without protanopia. And then if you do have protanopia, that's how they look on the right. So without protanopia, the top red looks very different from the brown just below it. But if you look at with protanopia, they look very similar. And if you had text on text, you might not be able to see it. So that's an example of the complexity. It's not necessarily just grayscale. So simple solution is to just have very bright text on very dark background, and then you solved it. So, you know, this is why captions are generally white on some kind of a box of darker color, just to make it very easy. And I see Bree Weir is saying that Mac and Windows have a built-in colorblind display filters as well, that Bree has found very super helpful. So thank you, Bree, that's great. And I understand there's also a feature in Canvas that offers this as well at the moment. So it's becoming more common. But the short version is make sure it's just very bright text on very dark background, or vice versa, is the way to get around this. So sign language interpretation. This is an area that we first explored during our support of virtual grad in the spring, or a couple of years ago now. It was the first time. So we had the support of the Equity and Inclusion Office, who connected us with an external agency that provides sign language interpreters. So they came in and worked with us. And you can see in the top right, there's our box with the sign language interpreter, who was on the other side of the room from President Ono at the time, providing that interpretation and being filmed simultaneously. So the thing about sign language is that it's not a word-for-word translation. And I didn't know this until we were working with grad, but it immediately became clear that an entire sentence can become one gesture, and vice versa. One word can become a series of gestures. And then there's also a lot of mood and emotion and the scope of the gesture, a wider gesture, a more narrow gesture of the same gesture. There's a lot of nuance. So this is not something that you can just translate and try to produce without an interpreter. So it requires a trained and skilled interpreter, and they charge by the hour and they're very busy. So that's sort of your first hurdle to producing sign language interpretation. They also prefer to work in a team of two because they coach each other, help each other work around challenging words. So you're hiring two people basically to produce this ideally. Theoretically, it can be produced in a DIY way. If you are able to access an interpreter who can work with you, you can just set up two cameras and have the person doing the lecture or whatever, and then have the interpreter in the same room facing a different camera, record them both, and then just edit the interpreter into a small box in the corner. You can do that in Camtasia or any editing software. This is if you're able to do it live. Something else that we did live and pre-recorded for grad. So live is when you have the interpreter in the room at the same time recording. On the other hand, we had videos provided to us, which we had to add sign language to. So you can have a pre-recorded video where you play that back to the interpreter and then they respond to interpreting. So then you add it on. That can be challenging because as I say, sometimes the whole sentence becomes one gesture, sometimes one word becomes many gestures. So trying to fit it on top of a pre-recorded video can be a challenge. It's best to do it live and have the speaker responding to the interpreter and giving them room to interpret. So there's some complexities there. Not impossible, but I've also found out recently that the Center for Accessibility, when students require a sign language interpreter, they're able to provide that in the classroom. So that's one way that you can access an interpreter at UBC if there's a student request. That doesn't necessarily apply if you have a video that you need to add interpretation onto. So unless a student requests interpretation for a video, I suppose. But anyway, there's a gap there currently where it's about accessing the interpreter. And the final area of technical approach to providing accessibility that I was going to talk about is called descriptive video. So this is less common. It's around, but it's basically adding narration to describe visual elements in a video. So if there are things happening visually that are important to the content that the viewer needs to know about and the viewer cannot see them, then you can add an audio narration track later to have somebody describing what is not being seen. Conventionally, this is done after the video is complete. Then it's shown to a narrator who records audio that's then edited on top. This is challenging because you haven't edited the video to fit in that narration, so sometimes it just won't fit. The adding a narrator voice later means that you're changing not only the pace of the video possibly, but also the style. The voice might not fit into the other voices. It might not be appropriate for the audio that's going on. So as I was researching descriptive video, I came across another approach called integrated descriptive videos, which was I don't know if it's quite pioneered by it, but it's being popularized by a group called Accessible Media Incorporated, which is a Canadian nonprofit. I'm going to give their information in the next slide, but they have taken the approach of, this is the proactive approach from the universal design and learning context, where when they're planning the video, they're thinking about descriptive elements. They're thinking about what elements are important that are only visual and need to be described. So they work it into the script, and they are working it in different ways so that it doesn't need to be added later. It's already in the original video. And this allows the continuity of voices, so you're not adding a different voice, and also just makes it a lot simpler for fitting that narration in because it's in there from the beginning. You're not trying to squeeze it in later. So I think this is a really powerful idea that I'm really excited about, because the adding descriptive video later is quite a daunting concept, but adding it in as you start is a great solution for visually impaired people. So as I was actually watched a recorded workshop with Accessible Media Incorporated, and they talked about a lot of ways that you can do this from the beginning of planning a video so that descriptive elements are already incorporated. So I thought I would just share a few of those. So on the right, we see a lower third, which is the line that you see on the bottom of a video with the name and the title. Ordinarily, we just see that text and nobody reads it out. We just assume that people are going to read it, but someone could read it out. We could have, if someone's going to interview the person, they could start by just introducing the person. We're speaking today with Dr. John Innes, Dean of the Faculty of Forestry, or the person themselves could introduce themselves while we see the text, and that way you're not relying on that text to get that information. Any kind of charts, tables, infographics that appear on the video, if somebody can describe those or explain the information in the chart in an audio way, in a way that you don't need to see it, that covers that within the original video, instead of just trying to add that in later. And any other visual action that's significant to the content. So if it's important for people to know that someone just walked across the room or somebody just picked up such object, having somebody, the person themselves could say it, I am now going to walk across, I'm now going to pick up this object or whatever. It's just incorporated into the scripting and the actual recording. So it doesn't need to be added later. And I feel like this can easily become conventional, much like captions. We put captions on everything now. We can also incorporate descriptive elements into everything that has information that needs to be incorporated. So I feel like this is an opportunity for a shift in how we produce videos, especially educational and other content like that. And so the group I was just mentioning is Accessible Media Incorporated by AMI.ca. It's a Canadian nonprofit, and they work a lot with CBC and other publicly funded groups to produce integrated descriptive video where they're working it into the original planning of the video. They also provide information about best practices and training around these issues. So that's their website, and I'll have the website at the end again, but just to say this is a great organization. So there's a couple other concepts I'll try to jump through quickly here, just to be in a timely way. Some of the ideas that are talked about in Universal Design for Learning in terms of how to increase accessibility. One is to offer a variety of formats of representation in general when you're providing learning. So with video, there's a lot of ways, opportunities this way. Video itself There's often an alternate form of representation if you're in a classroom with text and graphics and spoken, and then including a video. So it's already by nature an alternate form of representation. Within video, there's a lot of opportunities to add different kinds of formats. So animation, static graphics, infographics, text, icons, layers of audio. These are all often a part of video, and they provide a variety of ways of taking in the information, which can be helpful for an audience. It can also mediate the sensory stimulation level to meet learning needs. So this can be a matter of if people are easily overwhelmed, you can slow it down and have it more calm. If people are easily distracted, you can ramp it up. So you can just play with that to meet your audience in the style of the edit and the visuals, pace, things like that. Another concept within universal design and learning is to offer a variety of means of engagement. So this is also something that we often do with video, but just to sort of lay it out as part of UDL. Asynchronous video, as we often talk about, allows people to view at their own pace, their own volume, self-guided. They can view, step away, come back. The context that they're viewing the video in allows all these ways for people to help themselves to take the information in better, more effectively. It's also, video is great for reviewing before class, after class, preparation, reinforcement of information. Students producing video themselves is a way to encourage engagement with the content on a level that they wouldn't have ordinarily. And it also is, video is a way that we often use to increase access by having virtual field trips to locations that students wouldn't be able to access or not as easily. And also to access experts that aren't able to come to the university or there's just not the resources to bring them. You can do interviews at remote locations. So these are all ways that video can be used to offer a variety of means of engagement for the learner. And this is my favorite example of several of those ideas. This was a series that we produced with Patrick Colbert from Faculty of Forestry. It was my first project at UBC, working with Patrick. And we did a series of videos about plants in situ. Part of the course, he takes students out to the forest and shows them the plant and gives a short lecture in the forest. But taking notes in the forest is challenging, and he has a lot of ESL students. So we worked together to produce these short videos that students could watch before the field trip and after and review. And also just even if they're not even able to go out to the forest, this provided that access. So that covered a lot of those kinds of territories with video. So just to come back to the definition that I gave of universal design and learning, that hopefully I've been coming back to this, grounding the presentation in these ideas, but it's a proactive approach to learning design, allows us to recognize and accommodate the diversity of learners and reduce barriers to learning. So yeah, that's everything I have. I'm going to show a list of links here, but the time we have left, I'm happy to answer questions, and also eager to hear if anyone has any other thoughts about these tools that I haven't covered or perspectives. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Amazing presentation. So much information that is very valuable to increase accessibility in video. So I do have a couple of comments and questions, but let's go first with the audience. So I see a hand up there, Sandra. Oh, I think yeah.
Yeah, I think we also presented on the Seeing Eye app, and I was thinking if that could be included.
Sorry, what was the app?
Yeah, the Seeing app, and then the Envision.
Could you write them into the chat just so I can
Okay.
confirm the spelling? That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'm going to stop screen sharing, but if you would like to see, I'm happy to share this PowerPoint with people. But, so seeing A. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one. Can you tell me what that?
So basically, this is also an app that persons who are visually impaired can use to detect colors. It's able to tell the emotions of their face or tell the color of their dresses. You could also use that to detect the currency and read shorts and transcripts. It has a lot
great.
of,
Okay.
yeah, a lot of features on it.
And so that's to help, it scans and then interprets the color for people that would have challenges with color. Is that?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for bringing that up. I wasn't aware of it. And this is a Microsoft app. Is it free? Do you know offhand if it's?
Yeah, this is free on iPad, but it's not available. Yeah, on Microsoft. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Then
got
we
it.
have the Envision version, which also works directly like the Seeing Eye, but this is on. It's not available. I think it's available on other devices. So.
Okay. And is this also to support people that have issues with colorblindness?
Yes, please. For persons with visual impairment.
Visual impairment. Okay. Oh, thank you for mentioning these.
Thank you, Sandra. Tammy, do you have something? Oh, I think you're muted. Oh, I think you're muted. Yeah.
No, Tim.
There we go. Yes.
Flip. Now you can hear me.
Yeah.
Pull it down. CAI is something I've used with, visually impaired kiddos, but it also even reads expression. So we've used it for communication. So it could, and if you've got a favorable light, it can age you. It'll say, male with light gray hair and a smile, age, 33, depending on the light. But it's really helpful for showing expression. So yes, it does that as well.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, part of our journey right now, like we've done some of this work around the things that I presented, but we're also hoping to gather more information. So these are both very helpful. Thank you. That's great.
Thank you.
Hi, Michael. I'm Marika. Thank you for your interesting and informative presentation. So you did mention about when it's better to be have accessibility in mind during the planning phase. So as we have so many tools for the captionings and transcripts that we can do it post-production of the media. So during the planning phase, what would you be consider when you want the media to be more accessible?
Yeah, thank you. That's something I've been thinking a lot about, and we've been looking for opportunities that way. And for me, the biggest thing that I've discovered recently that I'm really wanting to focus on more is descriptive video. So including descriptions in the actual video for people that have visual impairment. So as I was saying, if there's lower thirds or any charts on the screen, just having people describe them out loud is a really great, that requires some planning ahead of time before you make the video to leave the time in the video and have it be part of the script. So I would say that's one thing that you can really include proactively. Yeah, and then also, well, anything that you would do around color issues, contrast for colorblind would be proactive as well. You need to work that in ahead of time while you're creating the video. You don't want to try to correct that later. So those would be two prime ones, I suppose.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Michael. So you mentioned that there were some challenges when the sign language interpretation was added if the video was already recorded. So what were exactly these challenges and how were they overcome?
Yeah, so what we found was that because we were doing both, we were doing some situations where the interpreter was in the room with the person speaking. In those situations, we found that it was really helpful to have the person that was, we would cue the person who was speaking so that they would have, so that the interpreter would have the opportunity to catch up. So for example, President Ono, when he finished this, we would ask him to stop and wait while we're watching the interpreter catch up. And then when the interpreter caught up, then we'd be like, okay, go, next sentence. So that's what you can do when it's live. When it's pre-recorded, you don't have that opportunity, obviously. So somebody might just keep on talking while the interpreter is getting further and further behind. So one thing that we did in that situation was Well, we had a couple of approaches. One was to just add in pauses in the video in post-production. So we were re-editing the video after the fact, which became very complicated because sometimes there was music or other elements. And so that's to be avoided. But that's one thing that you can try to do is add in some gaps to allow the interpreter to catch up. And in the end, if that's not possible and you're not doing it live, then sometimes the interpreter just needs to scramble and catch up. And we also had some clips where the clip would end and the interpreter would just keep going for several seconds. So we would just add black with the interpreter continuing to interpret after that footage had ended. So that's another possible thing. So
yeah, interesting. So like in those gaps, like do you usually put a picture or something to have there? I would imagine.
Yeah, well, it's possible, or like freeze the frame or something like that, or just fade the image to black, but keep the interpreter in the corner on the black screen.
Okay, yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, and I think like also it makes sense that in some cases like the interpreters just have to in some way like simplify what they're doing, because I was watching a video, like it was a live video, someone like a speaker, public speaker, and they had someone doing sign language kind of like on the side, but I saw like the person was like going really fast, but I guess they were just like simplifying it.
Yeah, from what I understand, that's what happens in live situations sometimes where the speaker isn't pausing for the interpreter. So yeah, it's something to be aware of. It's just easier for anyone that's relying on the sign language interpretation. It's great for them to have a nice even pace and to not have the interpreter rushing. So if it's possible, it's great to mediate that where you can.
Yeah. And, I've been very excited of the things you've been mentioning of adding narration. So I think that would be fantastic because I have a background in audio and all of that. And I was just imagining maybe like in the future someday, just as we have like the ability to, activate captions, maybe we can activate different mixes, which that would be pretty cool if that would be possible someday.
Yeah, that's something we were wondering about. There are ways to do that in H5P is interactive layering that you can add to videos at UBC now. UBC IT supports H5P where you can do things like that. You can choose between audio tracks as one potential. So that's one way to approach something like that.
Yeah, fantastic. Any more questions?
I see Bree is familiar with H5P. It's fairly new, but there's incredible potentials in there that we're pretty excited about as well. A lot of interesting things.
Yeah, it's a fantastic tool. We use it a lot also here at TTS. Okay, so let's see any final questions.
I'll put my email in the chat here if anyone has questions, and also feedback that you'd like to share. Constructive or otherwise is fine, because this is the first time I'm doing this presentation and we're going to be doing it again. So I'd appreciate any thoughts that anyone has. And also, if you would like the PowerPoint, feel free to send me an email and I can send you a PDF version of the PowerPoint with the links.
Yeah, that would be very useful. As I was watching the presentation, I was thinking this is something I'm definitely going to be coming back, as I engage in new projects. So thank you so much, Michael. That was a very great presentation, very informative. And all the best in the projects you'll be doing in these kind of fields.
Thanks, and thanks for having me. It's great to have the opportunity.
Fantastic, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. Great, so we're coming to the third part of the agenda, and now we're going to have a virtual social event. So that's going to happen in GatherTown, and I'm going to ask my colleague Marika to explain us how that works and share the link so we can all meet in that place. Marika?
Hi, everyone. So I guess I can just provide the link here. So in the chat box, you can now see the link with GatherTown. So I will meet you guys there. It's actually a virtual gathering event. So if you're interested in knowing more about it, we can actually meet there. So let's move away to that link. You just need to click on the link and then it will ask for your access to your camera and audio so you can join us there. Yeah,
perfect. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thanks, everyone. We'll see you there. Bye.